Welcome to Stitchery Stories, where textile artists share their life in fabric and thread, inspiration, techniques, disasters and delights. And I'm Susan Weeks, enthusiastic embroiderer and textile art dabbler who also loves podcasting. So take a break and enjoy our light-hearted chat, and please share with your friends so they can enjoy it too. Hello and welcome today to our lovely guest, Helen McCook. Hi Helen.
Hi Sue.
It's brilliant to speak to you today, and I've got a short bio here from Helen. I mean, she's sent me about 6 pages, so but this is Helen in a very small nutshell. So Helen McCook is an artisan hand embroiderer, designer, teacher, published author and historian, specialising in all aspects of traditional and contemporary hand embroidery and embellishment. She has worked as head of textiles and costume for Bonham's Auction House, atelier production manager for Hand and Lock, and unsurprisingly, Helen is also involved with the Royal School of Needlework, and she's been working as freelance since 2008. So, highly trained and with a wealth of knowledge and experience, she ensures that every commission and task is completed to the highest possible standard. Helen's clients can be assured that her unique skill set, combined with discretion, efficiency and commitment, leads to smoothly run projects, yielding the highest possible level of results within prearranged time and financial boundaries. Wow, that sounds like an IT contract,
Yeah. I always think it's interesting because people kind of often think about the kind of flowy, kind of creative, hard to nail down side of what we do, but actually there's time limits and there's financial complications as well, so we have to kind of stick to those things. So yeah, it's always worth mentioning.
It absolutely is, and I'm really glad that you did, because so often people don't mention it. And yes, when you are earning your living as a creative person, or like me, working online, crikey, these things can just go spiralling out of control, and any bit of profit in the job has disappeared down a plug hole. So, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes. So, lessons learned along the way. And, it's really great to highlight that point. So, thank you very much for that, Helen. And I'm doing well because I've just remembered to do your links as well. Now, Helen has got a pile of links here, and they will all be on Helen's episode on stitcherystories.com. Now, our main 2 places, you've got 2 websites. There's the traditionaltextileschool.com and helenmccook.com. That's right, isn't it, Helen?
That's correct. Thank you.
Yeah. And there's also, Helen has a newsletter on the traditionaltextileschool.com website as well, and you can sign up and keep in touch with where she is and what she's got going and offers and events and all the rest of it. So that would be a really great place. And then obviously we've got Instagram and Facebook as well. So she's quite busy.
It keeps me out of trouble most of the time.
Oh, that's what we need, isn't it, really? So, right, that's absolutely brilliant. And thank you so much, Helen, for being a guest here today. Before we get started with your Stitchery story, would you like to share with us what you're working on at the moment, Helen, and what's got you excited?
Oh God, there's so many things that have got me excited at the moment. I think I've just been commissioned to write a new book. So it's an interesting one because it's designing for embroidery with Crowwood publications. So it's a really interesting topic because a lot of the places that I go to and the people I teach, they love the stitching, but they're reliant on source materials or kits that they can find.
Yes.
And so they don't have the independence, so they can't express themselves in the way that they'd like to independently. So hopefully this is a book that's going to help them to learn how to get the idea from the brain to the page and then the page to the fabric. So that's a really exciting one for me because it's something that I've really kind of been interested in over my teaching career.
That is an interesting point, isn't it? Because quite often people say, "Oh, I can't draw," for example, so I can't design anything, or I can't do art or embroidery because I can't draw. And it's like, no, you don't need to be able to draw, but you do need to be able to put elements together. And I think that is a process that can be learned. You know, you may not be very artistic, but I think you can learn how to go about putting elements together and, you know, combining things and the general design process. So that's going to be an interesting challenge, isn't it?
I think it is an interesting one because basically there's 2 factors to it. The first factor is that it's a set of skills just like anything else.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that people are quite often in school, they're educated to think they don't know art or aren't good at art.
Yes.
And so it's not that they can't draw, it's that they've been taught to think they can't draw. So they become unconfident, and because they're unconfident, they don't stick with it. And if it was maths or anything else, we'd be sticking with it, and there's a formula to it, and you stick to the formula and you learn that and you can keep going. And it's one of those things that, unfortunately, there's an alienation process. So hopefully it will help to give some like tips and tricks to be comfortable with the process and to feel that you're confident enough to have a play with it. And that's the thing, I think, with embroidery and with design, it's feeling confident to think that actually, excuse the language, but sod it. I'm going to see what happens. I'm going to see where it takes me, whether it's the pencil on the page or the needle and thread on the fabric. It's just letting it go, letting it lead you. So, yes, there's rules and there's things that you can do if you want to do particular types of things, but there's lots of play stage in that as well. So it's interesting to be able to hopefully get across some of the things I've been teaching to people over the years.
Yeah.
So hit a wider audience with that.
Yeah.
That's one of many things, other things that I'm doing teaching wise. So I've just started my own school in Birmingham. So it's a textiles hub. So we're obviously doing a lot of embroidery, but we're also doing other things. There's going to be knitting and crochet and needle felting and silk painting. And the idea is that it's a number of people coming together to share skills from a very, very absolute beginner stage, never picked up a needle, never picked up the crochet hook, never knitted, or to the point that, or the intermediary stages where people maybe know how to knit but don't know how to follow a pattern, or they want to have follow-on skills for their embroidery. And then obviously with the embroidery we're doing right up to master classes, so it's people who are looking to maybe do professional level and really polish up skills they've already got. But so the idea is to try and make it really accessible, and being in the centre of the country in Birmingham, it's a nice location.
You are in a good location there, aren't you, to do that, so people can get to you as well. Is that what your traditional textile school, or is that a new thing, a different thing?
Yeah, that's the traditional textile school. So I've been freelance now for about 8 years, but I've been teaching, I think, for probably about 15, 16 years now, through the Artisan and various other places, embroiderers guilds and private groups. And I just felt it was a really interesting time to put these skills together in my hometown. There's a lot of buzz and interest in Birmingham at the moment. There's a lot of development going on. We've obviously got the Commonwealth Games coming here, and there's lots of things, high-speed rails coming through, and it's a really upbeat time to be a Brummie. And so I just really felt I wanted to bring something really kind of special together in my hometown. I work a lot away. I'm very peripatetic. I work in all sorts of places, and I spend about a quarter of my time in Scotland every year, and spread out throughout the year in various other places. But my home is Birmingham. So, and it's what I love about it is that it's a melting pot of cultures, of different people, and I want that to be reflected in the place that I'm creating for sharing skills.
Yeah, no, it's a really brilliant project. That obviously embroidery has been your life. How did you first get involved in it, Helen? And who taught you? And what sort of things did you start off with?
I mean, I was always a sticky-fingered little child, basically. So my mum, every time we went anywhere, my mum would be having me by the cheeks and saying, "Do not touch anything." And obviously, as soon as the back was turned, my fingers were up everything, and just feeling your way around the world, and that's what I think is the thing that I love most about textiles. It's tactile if you've done it well. It's that slightly perverse thing. You should want to touch it, but if you're touching it, you're decaying it, and I love that.
Yes.
And just the irony of that whole thing. But I did little bits of cross stitch and things with my mum when I was little, and then I didn't pick up a needle, and I did art A level, which was based in puppetry and prop making and theatre design, quite unusual. And then I did an art foundation level, which was fantastic. I just did lots of kind of drawing and 3D stuff, and just tried everything, tried my teeth at everything. And then because the A levels are so varied, you have a range of skills. So, one person could have done an A level that looks mostly at drawing skills, and another person could be doing things that are, photography, and then they're all going to the same university courses, and they're so varied in the skill base. So that's what's fantastic about an art foundation. You get to do a bit of everything, really try your teeth, work out how to do a portfolio, and actually make a better choice when you go on, if you choose to go onwards. So afterwards I went to university, and I actually trained as a printer and dyer originally. So I trained in print and dyed textiles with non-European art history, because I've always been a bit of a history geek. So I love the stories, the stories behind everything and how they link together. Whilst I was at university, I went on work placement, and it was a big industrial printers and dyers. And they were fantastic, but they were saying to me, once they got to know me, they'd be like, oh, it's a dying trade, don't go into it. You won't have a career in this for your whole life. And I was, the first person says it and you're kind of like, oh, that's interesting. By the time the fifth person said it to you in about 3 days,
you start to
ears
prick up, don't they?
Got a bit of a sinking feeling going on at the moment. And so somebody had obviously seen this on my face and said, okay, let's talk about what makes you different. Why would I employ you? Because there's so many people coming out of university and the jobs are getting harder and harder and less. What makes you special? And actually, it was a really good conversation, because we kind of chatted about it. And I was like, well, probably, if I'm being honest, there's probably 10 of me out there. There's 10 or more. We're 10 a penny. There's a lot of us. We're all skilled. We're all got our own talents. So in reality, it's quite hard to answer that, if I'm being honest. So I suppose, personality to the job, suitability, work ethic, that kind of thing would make a difference. But you could pick any single one of us that would be suitable. And he was like, okay, so what makes you different? What are you going to do? If you really want to go into textiles in Britain, you need to find a niche. So I kind of went away and thought about it, and it was a really good conversation, and I gave it a good hard think.
It was obviously a very pivotal conversation.
Yeah, it was.
A pivotal moment, because those are the things that everybody struggles with to make themselves different online. It's the same issue. So that was quite a far-sighted conversation.
It was
for somebody to have with you.
It completely changed the direction that I was going in, and it also, I really valued that person's honesty, because they could, rather than just saying the throwaway comment of "don't go into it, it's a dying trade," they had the decency to look at my face and realise what they were saying was having an impact, and then tried to talk to me about that. And with their experience, it meant that we could then have a conversation that was very, very useful for me, rather than just quite worrying. So, like going away with a handful of doubts, you kind of had a focus of, what I should be thinking about. And it was useful because I'd got a year left at university, and I kind of used that year to get on with my university stuff, but to think about what direction I wanted to go in. And I knew it was textiles. I just didn't know how I was going to translate it into something that was more niche. So I kind of did my research, and I love other people's constructed work. So I love the weaving, I love the knitting, but the process is not something that I really wanted to do full time. So I thought, okay, so that's a part of textiles that is, I can block off. Love other people's, it's not for me. And then
not for me,
the process just didn't appeal as much. And then I was already doing printing, and it felt a little bit like a jigsaw with a couple of pieces missing. So I was a bit like, okay, because you're expected to come out fully formed and you're not. And and it's important to give yourself that time to develop. But I think the other thing was that it was that thing about moving forward, and I looked at the things that interested me. I like the history, I love the texture, I loved the tactile quality, and embroidery was the thing that was coming above everything else in that. So really I looked at the concept. I was thinking, do I want to do conservation of textiles, or do I want to be making new pieces and learning how to do that myself? So I came up with the Artisan and applied to their apprenticeship, and I think it was a bit of a culture shock to both parties. So I kind of bounced straight out of university, went straight to the RSN. So after I graduated, and so everything at university was very much about development and experimentation and moving things forward and pushing the letter. And obviously the RSN wasn't about that when I was an apprentice. So I went there in 2000 for 3 years. for a full-time apprenticeship, and it was absolutely fascinating. And what I realised pretty rapidly was I was now a round peg in a round hole. And the jigsaw pieces that came together, that I'd got a couple of pieces missing at my degree, slotted in place. So all that learning that I'd taken, people kind of said to me, well, you could have just gone straight to the Artisan, or you could have just done embroidery at university. Yeah, but you need the road to take you there. So
it's the journey is often so important. It's not necessarily where you finished up, although that is important, but it's all the pieces that fit together to make you as you, and that help you then make your way and earn a living and do all of the things that you do is based on all the things that you've already learned. And so that university phase would have been highly valuable in all of that as well.
There's no wasted time, when you're learning. There's no wasted time. If things go wrong, you're going to learn from that. If things go beautifully, you're going to be pleased and learn from that as well. And I think I can genuinely say that it's been useful, because I've used all the range of skills that I learned at RSN and university and A-level and foundation. They've all come together for me, and I've created a job that brings out the things that I've enjoyed in all those aspects of my learning.
Which is brilliant. That's a brilliant achievement in itself, to bring all those things together to create that. We always laugh about this, that proper job in inverted commas. So, I suppose then it also reflects you've been very determined and quite strategic in your steps as to where you're going to go. And even when you kind of look and say, well, you were at Bonhams and you've worked for Hand and Lock, all of those are going to be such valuable experience, which now feeds into the experience and information and help that you can pass on to other people as well. It's a very interesting path that you've had there, Helen.
I think it's a couple of things, actually, because one of the things that I've been extremely blessed with is that the people I've worked with have been extremely generous with their knowledge. There's been no fear of passing that knowledge on, and they've openly wanted to share that and be part of that process, that tradition is kept alive. So I've been extremely blessed with the people I've worked with, and I've tried to take that forward and translate that into the way that I work. So I try and pass that knowledge on as openly and as much as possible. I try and share that. I love that conversation where you can spark an idea in somebody and they can spark an idea in you, and it doesn't matter whether one's a complete newbie and you've been stitching for years or vice versa. It's fantastic. There's always something to learn and something to know. And
I was going to say that, there's always something to learn from somebody else, isn't there?
Absolutely.
No matter where you are, there's always something to learn from somebody else.
I've taught people who don't speak the same language as me. We don't share a common thread of language at all, but we can still learn from each other through the making process, that commonality that you share in this subject that you love. And as I say, I've had absolutely amazing experience put at my feet, and it was my choice to then what I do with it. So that was the one aspect of it. But the other aspect of it, I think, was I've been extremely lucky. I've kind of won the life lottery in my family, because they've been so supportive. My parents, bless them, they were quite unsure, obviously, when I was partway through university, got 1 year left, and they were like, okay, so what are you thinking now? And I was like, well, I'm thinking about another 3 years, actually, somewhere else. And they were like, oh, okay. And to be honest, they always said to me, you need to do a job you enjoy, because you'll do it a long time, and you don't want to be getting out of bed every day dreading the day. I don't think they had embroidery in mind, but to be fair to them, they kind of had the conversation and said, okay, we don't know anybody who does this. We don't know anyone who we think is even interested in this. How can we help you? Does it lead to a job? What kind of job is it? How is it practical? How can we help you? And as long as I was learning, they could see that I was learning and working my socks off. They would support me to the hilt. So I've been so fortunate in that. And I think also an aspect is because I was raised in a family that's very sporty. So very, very kind of high level athletes, family plus family friends. So it's been interesting, because I think I've approached it as an endurance race more than a sprint.
Right, yeah,
so it's been a thing where you have a program of things that this sounds very kind of like I've sat down and made a plan in that sense, and I haven't. It's just that I've approached it in the same way that I've been taught to approach everything, because that's how my family works. It's you need to think about what you want to achieve. You need to work out how you're going to do that, and you have to be prepared to put the hours in, because if you're not prepared to do the legwork in running, you're not going to get across that tape. If you're not prepared to do it in embroidery, you're not going to get a finished product, and nobody's going to come and speak to you.
Yeah, you can see the threads there, the influence that being part of a sporting family has clearly had on you.
Yeah, it has. It's been massive.
Very strongly, because even if you're maybe not sporty yourself, or you've decided that you're going to sit around and do embroidery all day, not go running, etc., then you're influenced, aren't you, by what's going on around you, even though you necessarily don't realise it. So yeah, that's a really interesting way in which you've gone about doing things. You say it kind of almost looks like you've made a plan, but you've still, as you say, decided where you're going and have been quite purposeful. I think in what you've done.
I think part of it is that that's the culture I was raised into. You work, you decide what you want and work hard for it. But equally, as I say, I've been really fortunate with the people I've stumbled across in my career, that they've been so generous. It's all just slotted together, and it's that thing about, my dad always used to use the quote. It's funny how the harder I work, the luckier I seem. There is an aspect as well of being in the right place at the right time, having the right opportunities, but then making the most of those opportunities, because the door can be open for you, but you have to be able to stay in the doorway yourself. People who aren't in embroidery or aren't embroiderers don't relate that discipline to what we do, because they think it's a little bit airy-fairy, or they don't really understand the process of it, and the determination and discipline it needs to be able to keep sitting down at something and wanting to drive it forward and to learn and get it finished. So it's interesting when I use that analogy, because a lot more people can get that analogy.
No, that's a very strong one, as you say, and I think people will be interested in hearing you talk in that way as well. So it's back to that very first comment I made about, wow, this sounds like an IT project. It's there's some very definite, strong themes running through what you've been doing, which are coming out. So what would you say then? I mean, there's been so many achievements, and people can go and, for the detail, really can go and read on your website. There's a nice page in there all about it. But where would you say the high points have been, Helen? You must have had plenty.
Oh my goodness, yeah. I mean, I've been a bit blessed, as I say, with some of the projects that I've been able to work on. I think some of the proudest, the things that have made me most proud, I think I worked the wedding dress, veil and shoes for when Catherine Middleton and Prince William got married. So I was part of the Artisan team that worked on that. And I think, apart from obviously the thing of being able to work with part of my team, I love being part of a big team that works on a project, together, that they can achieve something really outstanding. And that was a project where, the eyes of the world were...
Oh, yeah, no stress there then.
Yeah, but I think it's that thing. I mean, we put the same amount of effort into something for Betty Smith down the road. It's still her important item. It's still something that's important to her. And you have to put the same level of discipline and effort into it, because it means as much to her and as it does to Catherine Middleton on her wedding day. It's just the amount of people seeing it is slightly different. And but I think the lovely thing, apart from being able to share that working moment and this kind of iconic period, this kind of iconic end product with my team, my friends as well. We are friends as well as colleagues at the RSN. I think being able to share that moment with my family was really important, because I took my family to see the exhibition at Buckingham Palace. So we had a really lovely day where they got to see something that I work on as an end product. Because quite often, if you're working on theatre or fashion or something, a commission, they quite often see a fraction that, so if they see something, it's a part of something, it's not a whole something. So being able to show people an end product that's something that's recognisable, that's they've seen in action, so to speak, it makes a big difference. So that was a lovely thing that I was really, really proud of for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, and for you to have heard, this is me, this is what I've done, this is my pinnacle of success. It may be different from the rest of the family, but I'm still being successful in my way, and this is what I've achieved. Come and look at it. It's it's the world's seen what I've done, just like the world's seen other people and athletes.
This is it.
Yeah,
I think it's interesting though as well, because I mean, people do extraordinary things quite often in their daily jobs. Whether they're working in a shop or working, in a hospital, or working on a reception somewhere, or whatever they're doing, they quite often they'll do something in their working life that is extraordinary, but they can't share that with people. You know what I mean?
No,
it's not something that other
it's
people outside
tangible,
the job will get or be able to see or hold or whatever. So it just felt like a real privilege for me to be able to share that thing that was so important to me at that time. So that was a beautiful thing, really. And I think I know a lot of my colleagues felt the same way, and it was lovely that we have that joint experience. But I think there's loads of things there. I mean, I worked on a hanging for the Queen's Jubilee that was on the outside of Buckingham Palace. That was also with the Artisan, but that was when I was training, and being able to get the opportunity to work on something so impressive when you're still training. That's part of what makes the Artisan so genius. I mean, they bring people in and they've got that whole gamut of experience, and the kind of more the old hands, so to speak, will help to guide the new ones. And that's how we pass on our skills as well. So that was a beautiful thing. And then other things I've been proud of, I think, really kind of, apart from sharing my knowledge with a lot of people and sharing my love of textiles with a lot of people and making it accessible, I think I did a project with the Scottish National Portrait Gallery, which was with people. It was various aspects of society in and around Scotland, and obviously focused on Edinburgh, which is where the gallery is. But it was a special project with people with visual impairment, which sounds like a very strange thing when you're talking about embroidery, because people think sharp needles and scissors. Let's keep those away from the people with visual impairment. But we did all aspects of work, including workshops where they're making. So, and I can genuinely say it was absolutely thrilling project for me, because I learned so much, and I love you've probably got this by now. I love learning what fires me up, really. The fact that I'm never going to know. People always think embroidery is quite niche, but you're never going to know everything. You're never going to have mastered everything. So it's a horizon line you're constantly chasing, and I love that. And that was another aspect of the horizon I had not thought about before. And being able to create an independence of sorts for people who had visual impairment and were going into the galleries. And it was so that they could, I made samples that accompanied 6 of the portraits. And when you describe a portrait to somebody, quite often your personal view of it will be quite clear in the way that you describe it, even though you're trying to be neutral and not biased. It will come across in your tone. And that is very much picked up on. So to create an independence for people, I was recreating aspects of embroidered parts of the garments or the backdrops or whatever, so that they could handle those and create an independence for themselves. So they were as accurate as possible based on tests that I was doing with people with visual impairment group that goes in regularly. And so we were creating pieces that were workable textiles, beautiful to look at, good to handle. So that's the unusual thing. You are handling them. And it comes back to being that sticky-fingered child.
Yeah, you're allowed to touch those. And that's the way in which visually impaired people can then interpret what everybody else takes for granted that they can see.
Yeah, very much so.
Or see clearly. So that's an absolutely fascinating glimpse there into something that you wouldn't normally say. You wouldn't relate, would you, with embroidery? And that's what I love doing about this, is all these different conversations I have with people, with embroidery is kind of stuck in the middle there in textile art, but it spins off in so many ways you would never, ever, ever, ever think about. That's why I like doing this, because it also helps other people to think, God, I've never thought about that. Or it might spark off an idea in somebody else to do something similar. Or that's brilliant. Yeah, I love those highlights from one very globally public thing to helping people with visual impairment to enjoy textile art and embroidery as well. They're absolutely fantastic, Helen. We could talk all day.
I know.
So what I was just wanting to kind of pick out as well from all the various elements of what you're doing now, is if you just kind of a quick couple of minutes, because that's really all we've got left. How you organise your creative time, because sometimes it can be quite difficult to say, right, today I'm going to do this and I have to be creative. So it's kind of, what sort of issues do you have around organising your creative time, Helen?
Well, I think probably the main thing for me is because I love what I do, it's hard to see where the line is on work and pleasure.
Yes. I think Jen said something similar on that lines as well. And a few people have. It's like, well, what do I do for a hobby? Because this is my hobby and I love it.
It's all consuming. It's one of those things that you kind of find yourself thinking about. Is you'll think that you're having a day off, but then you'll find that you're taking photos of a strange bit of paving slab or a beautiful stained glass window that you happen to pass. I have just an immense amount of photographs of things that have inspired me, the things that I think are beautifully daily items even. And it's that I think can be a bit of a challenge. But for me, I'm obsessed with my diary because I do have a bit of an awful memory, because my work schedule is very varied. So there's no such thing as an average day. Which I love.
You've got no pattern, have you? You've got no pattern to rely on, and no kind of regularity, and that is a challenge then. Yeah.
So the diary is like sacrosanct. So I don't agree to anything without the diary in front of me, and I'll have double checked it to be on the safe side. But also, I'm a big fan of a to-do list. So that comes back to the wanting to remember everything. So I love to have a to-do list and then get things ticked off. It's very satisfying at the end of the day to have a thing that you can physically, that's done. Tick. That's off the mental list. And then I think also it's just that thing about the discipline. People quite often think going freelance will be an ideal thing. I can wake up when I want, I can do what I want. Well, in reality, your work still has to fit around everybody else and everybody else's requirements and what you need to achieve. So in reality, you'll work longer hours than most of the people that you know. But you won't mind that because you love it. And even on the days when you don't love it so much, it will do something to make you smile, so it always draws you back in. It's like a mean lover sometimes. I'll push you away far enough just to reel you back in at the last minute. But it's that thing where you've got to have that engagement with it. So I think it's not so much having a fixed plan or a fixed way of dealing with it, but for me it's working out long term what I want to do, what I need to get slotted in, and then having spaces in between that I can achieve all the stuff that I need to do, the setup, the prep, and anything else, like the commissions that come in, because I work on commissions as well. So, having the manoeuvrability. But for me, part of the thing that's important as well is being able to mix being in my city, doing my thing, but also going away, because I have to have that aspect where I'm going out, I'm meeting new people, I'm seeing new things. I'm constantly reinvigorating the way that I'm seeing my work. So that for me keeps it energized, because it's not the same for everybody and you have to suck it and see.
You've got to just try things sometimes. You have to take that leap of faith. You can plan and do as much as you like, but sometimes you've got to press the go button and go and try and see what happens. And most times you can be very pleasantly surprised.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not going to be a fly by the seat of your pants kind of scary moment when you kind of hand in your notice and say, I'm going freelance. But it is going to be frightening. But the way, however suits you to get it done, whether you go part-time, whether you go, just go straight for it and hand the notice in. But you've got to have a plan of what, and you've got to know yourself. That's the thing. Knowing yourself.
No, I'm glad you brought that out, because that is the kind of key. The really is key is knowing yourself, the discipline, and having the confidence that you've got the skills, and everything will kind of roll its way out in time for you. That invariably does happen as well. So, but I think it's a challenge. I
think as well, being able to be comfortable with the fact that because you're not going to know everything, there's going to be things that you need to learn along the way, and sometimes it's that thing, I don't know what I don't know. It's that thing that you think you're okay, and then something could come up and you think, I don't really know how to do that, or I've never been asked to do that before. And you've got to allow yourself the time and be comfortable to say to somebody, actually, I'm not sure, but I'm going to find out and I'm going to get back to you. And that's sometimes a learning process. As I say, it's that big becoming comfortable with saying, Actually, I don't know, but I can find out and we'll get it done.
Yeah, it is a key element as well in any kind of freelance, self-employment kind of role. It's that balance, isn't it? Because you don't want to turn people off by saying, no, I don't know. But you also don't want to then promise things that you might not be able to do. So it's just that nice, and you don't want to mislead people, and that's, you're not doing that, but it's just to be kind of upfront and curious. Yeah, okay, that sounds like an interesting way of doing things. Let's see how it's going to work.
I think, and knowing why you're doing stuff, why you're doing stuff, and learning to say no as well. Because the thing, people quite often when they're freelance, they say yes to everything because they're scared about the next paycheck. But being confident that actually that's not for you and you don't want to be doing something, that's an important lesson.
It is, and that was something that came out when I was speaking with Louise Gardner a couple of weeks ago, where we said it's hard to say no, but that's the way in which sometimes you grow, because you've given yourself, it's back to space, you've given yourself that space to say no and then move forward, and invariably something better, something more appropriate crops up. But again, that is a scary place to be at that point in time when you know, I'm going to say no, but you don't want to fill your life with yes all the time, because that is not the way to have a meaningful and rewarding kind of career either. Healthy. Absolutely. It really isn't. Well, Helen, we could absolutely talk about this all day. I think I might have to do a bit of editing, but it's been absolutely brilliant speaking to you today. I've so enjoyed the range of what you've done, but I think what's been interesting for me as well is the things that we've talked about as the undercurrents, the issues about being quite purposeful, how the influences from sport has made a big difference in how you've addressed your embroidery career. You would never have thought that, and particularly the ideas about bringing in embroidery for visually impaired people as well, a different section of society who gets ignored out of a lot of creative activity as well. So yeah, absolutely love those contrasts. And your CV is very long and broad and varied, and we could have talked for 3 days, I'm sure. But people can go and look on Helen's website, because the information there about the specifics of what we're talking about in terms of her career is all on there. And she's got a lovely website as well.
Thank you.
And you can sign up for a newsletter and keep in touch with where she is and what she's doing. So that would be a brilliant thing. So there we are. That's it, Helen. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
Oh, it's been a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
If you liked this episode and want to hear more, then please join the Stitchery Stories fan club so you can get an email when a new episode is released. It's a quick and easy way of listening and of keeping up with any news and offers from our lovely guests. Please visit stitcherystories.com to join the fan club. Of course, if you have iTunes, then subscribe there to automatically get new episodes, and why not leave us a review and rating whilst you are there. So that is the end of our Stitchery story for today. So keep stitching, keep smiling, and keep creating your very own Stitchery stories.